Good morning, everyone, and welcome to this week's special NCLUG presentation for National Surveyors Week. This will be our fourth day of the week, and I am personally excited to bring back Emory Kincaid for the NCDOT Location and Survey Roundtable discussion. So I'd like to go over a couple housekeeping items for today. The webinar is a presentation, so all the attendees will be muted. So make sure you don't mute all. At any time during the webinar, you can submit questions into the chat box, and Tonya and I get those. We are recording this webinar and we'll share the link after the event. Some videos are currently on the website, and Tonya will be putting a link in there that will take you to all of them come next week. NCLUG is offering PDHs to those who have registered on the website for this event. After the session, NCLUG will send out PDH receipts to those that attended the live meeting. No credits will be given to those who view the recorded presentation. So, Emory, are you on here?
Have you seen? I'm on here, Pam.
Okay. So I'd like to introduce Emory Kincaid from NCDOT Location and Survey for our presenter today.
Thank you, Pam. Let me share my screen real quick. I had spoken with Pam and Tonya earlier, and I thought we would start this by me taking maybe 10 or 15 minutes of processing some data in order for you to see how we anticipate using this. I thought I had a file up. There it is. Okay. So what I've got is I've got a blank file I'm going to create a field book in, and I think Don Lee and both Don Lee and Mark White did a really good job the last couple of days showing the TBC as well as ORD. It's interesting when you think about it. Both programs really go by the Explorer approach, where you're working over here in the tree to the left. But anyhow, here in this, we'll go and create us a field book. I've got some data sets that were sent to me by our Asheville field office a couple weeks ago. And here's my data sets. The initial coordinates in this traverse was incorrect. While I'm not going to do a traverse adjustment today, I'm going to drop in this control file into my field book just so the rotation is correct on this data. So typically what I would do is I would bring in my traverse first. And it will ask me here, it says that, hey, you've got different coordinates in this file than what you have as your control. So I'm going to skip that and apply all. And you'll see my traverse. At first, you're going to look at this and you're going to say, oh my gosh, what kind of a traverse is that? But as this goes on, you'll see what's happening. I can use my Analyze tab up here. And of course, like Don Lee showed yesterday, I can turn on my points names. I can put on my elevations. I have the ability to toggle those any way I like. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to bring in my pavement data, and I want to drop it right into the same field book. There's some people ask about should they keep it in separate field books or should they keep it in the same field book? I'm really kind of a proponent of keeping everything in the same field book. However, there are times when you may want to separate those into individual field books. And as you see, there is our pavement, our crown line, and it looks pretty much like what you would see in if you'd process this in SS4 using the old process of GeoPy. The one thing that you'll notice is now you see all your observations, so you can see where you were set up and does everything look correct. I'll toggle these off. That kind of clutters the screen. I can mouse over these And for each shot, I can see what the angle was, as well as the rod heights and the field codes that were used. Now let's bring in our DTM work. Drop that in. On occasion, you will find that it gets a little slow in processing. I think that's just a memory issue, but I'm not sure. But there's everything that we've got so far. So let's first look at one of these pipes. What we try to do is we're going to try to label everything possible when you first process the data. The first thing you're going to say is, okay, you've got an invert elevation there, but what if I edit something such as my HI? For instance, if my field crew had come in and said that, hey, we forgot to put the right rod height in, I can simply come in and tag this line, use an element selection. I'll mouse over it again, and I can pull up the information on it. So there's my observation. There's my rod height. And that should have been 7 point. That's the one thing that I dislike about this. It's easy sometimes with this on-screen display to run your mouse off of it, but let's say that was supposed to be 7.3. You will see that it changed the level of that, and the invert has also changed accordingly. So it is linked. Those two are linked. You're going to see by us doing our annotations automatically, there's going to be times where it gets kind of ugly. You should be able to move these around with no problem, and the linkage still stands in place. Now for things such as here, we mouse over this. If we don't know what it is, we can mouse over it. It tells us that it's an underground tank. You see that the field crew didn't use their linking codes to close that line. I recommend you always go through here. This is, you never hurt yourself a bit by clicking on the items and then seeing what's available to you. But in this case, what I'll do is I'll come up here to my edit ribbon, and I want to close. So I hit close. It'll ask me down here to locate the linear item, and it'll show me what it's going to do. I can accept it. It closes it out. The same goes with if I want to link up lines. There'll be occasions where you may have a gap in your break lines that you want to that you don't want to have. So for instance, while we don't typically want to do this, if I wanted to join these two break lines, I could simply use the join command, locate my first line, locate my second, and it didn't do it. I'm not certain exactly why that is, but typically it will join those very well. Another thing that you can do, they've really tried to look at this software and look at it so you can do most of your edits graphically instead of in tables, while you can do both. And it's really a preference thing. They give you multiple ways of doing just about everything. Let's go in here and let's look. Well, I'll tell you what we'll do. We'll go to, I'm going to change the workflow from survey, which I'm typically in, to NCDOT. Here I've got the one map where I can install it. I'll show you this different option here in a moment, but I can turn the image on. And I can start looking at it. Let's look down here. I know I've got some issues down here. Anyone who's messed with OC commands can tell you that this can be an issue from time to time. We'll go in here. I'm sorry, clicked on the wrong thing. I'll go in the survey and I'll see that I've got some issues with my OC line here. I can come in and click on this, and you'll see it puts what all these points were coded. I don't know, that's a little difficult to see, and I understand the resolution sometimes on your screens are a little small. Let's try zooming in just a little bit. Does everybody see where the code is? So what I can then do is I can come in and just click on this. I'll say I'm going to change that to an arc toggle. And this is an oddity to me, but I'll change this one to an arc toggle also. Still doesn't do it right, but then when I change this from an arc toggle to none, it should correct it up. No, it didn't do it. But it has some, you know that on occasion, you'll have to play around with your OCs to get those working correctly. By the same token, I could also bring this up in a tabular form. I could come over here under my field book. In this case, I'm dealing with 300123. I can come down here to all linear features, and under 3001, I can do a details. Do details here. I'll pick on this so I see all of those. And did I say 21 or 23? Let's see. I can go in here and right click and I can pull up a point manager list, a point list. So then I've got a point list, something that we're kind of accustomed to dealing with in the past, where I can still go in there and change those linking codes. So there, like I said, there's multiple ways to edit the data. One of the things that we decided to put in this, going back to NC1 map, we are also going to pull the property from NC1 map. So you have the ability, if you want to toggle on the property, you'll see the GIS property come into place for you. That we view that as being helpful when you're placing your properties and working on that. And of course, just the detach, we'll get rid of that. That's just something quick to give you an idea of what we're looking at, and I'll be happy to answer any questions you have.
Emory, so when you were trying to join those two lines, and it didn't look like it ended, one of my questions before you even started was, does it matter how it was located? Because it does look like it joined at the other end of those two lines. And I'm wondering if it was,
okay.
if there was a way. Yeah, and I was wondering if there was a way that you can edit it to where, you know, if they started at that one end and located it in the field going in the downward southwest kind of direction, is there a way you can switch like the direction of the line so that you can join it at the end that you were trying to?
Well, in this case, I didn't notice this, Tonya. So I could have probably used a close command, and that would have linked these two.
Okay.
In fact, let's give that a shot. But yes, I can switch directions on lines. I do have that ability. Let's go back to survey here. And instead of using a join command, I'm going to use a close command. So there, it kind of does it. And this is an option here, right? Because when it's trying to do a close command, in a lot of cases, you're trying to close something that's squared off in a lot of cases. And by setting this at true and false, you've seen a moment ago where it's kind of squared off here, which you really wouldn't want in this case. If I toggle this to false, it gets rid of that. So there. And I'm glad you've seen that because I was curious why it wasn't closing or wasn't joining before. And I just didn't pay enough attention to the file. If we wanted to switch the direction of a line, I wish I had a true line in this particular file, but you can come in here to this line, like I said, one of these, I probably need to find something else. I can come in here and mouse over it. And if you look along this bar, you're going to have a thing called transpose. And that's going to reverse the direction of that line string. For example, if that had been a true line, it would have been very easy to see that it would reverse it and you would see the symbology point to one direction or the other.
Okay, we are getting some questions in the chat box. Richard Hensley was saying the data in the is oriented correctly because he says something is wrong with the way the camera the way the camera did it. It did not come in a scattered. I'm sorry, I'm trying to read very tiny print. When it was processed, he said it says, Emory, I don't know if you can turn on your commands and actually see it. I'm fumbling through my words here. It says it did not come in scattered when you processed it.
Did not come in scattered.
Yeah, Emory, some of the data you can see it's obviously out of place. It's got edge of pavements out in the middle of the road. That's what he's talking about.
Okay, yeah, and Dave, I got in a rush here. I didn't even notice that.
Mm-hmm.
I do know there's an issue sometimes when we hit the skip option. I thought that had been resolved, but evidently that may not have been the case here because I did notice, you're right, it's all over the place. In fact, that's one of the things that I kind of like about this. I'm going to just delete this field book out. Come on. And we can recreate it real quickly. And I'll help you out, Richard. I will recreate it so it looks right so people won't think you do bad work. I know that's a concern of yours. It's hard to make jokes when you can't hear anybody in the background. I know Richard is speaking, but he's muted. That's probably a good thing.
Emory, this is Jeff. I'll laugh for you.
There you go. Anyhow, let's just bring all these files in again. And this time I'm going to, instead of bringing a traverse in, I'm going to bring in the pavement, and then I'll bring in the DTM. There'll be a slightly, so this should look much better. There you go. And that does look correct there. You feel better about that, Richard? I see your comment. I got my phone next to me. I can at least hear the bings. Okay. Any other questions, Tonya?
Well, actually, Pam has some questions as well. She's getting the emails.
Oh yeah, I have one that email came in from Michael Reed. He said, I use mostly AutoCAD Civil 3D for the most projects, but just getting into doing more microstation projects, I was wondering, does OpenRoads have a pipe network?
A pipe network. I'm unsure what he means by that.
Is he attending? If he wants to unmute, he can clear up that question.
Yeah, I don't know.
Here in survey, we typically don't set up pipe networks. Now, of course, we go out there and we locate our pipes. As you see here, However, to say that we incorporate pipe networks, that's probably more of a hydro function, would be my guess. But then again, I'm unsure what he means.
Emory, Robert Garrett here. You could actually take your survey data, extract it into a pipe network using the drainage tools that are in OpenRoads. So it's not your world, but it can consume your data.
Yeah, and I've talked with our hydro guys about that. They're in the process of trying to figure all that out now.
Did we have any questions written in here?
I believe I believe we have covered the main questions. Ladies and gentlemen of the audience, I don't know why I addressed you that way. If you do have questions, you're welcome to raise your hand or even unmute yourself to ask a question.
I've got a few things here, Tonya, that I will just talk about that may be of interest to people. One thing are utilities. As I've stated before, NCMap no longer exists, and we had a utility in there called NCUtil, where we actually placed attribute data on our utilities that covered, well, it's pipe sizes, or it's utility sizes, I guess I should say, and who the utility owner was. Currently, right now, we're using item types in MicroStation or ORD to handle that. So I'm going to draw a couple quick utilities here. So here we've got a gas line, of course. And then I'll go ahead and place a power line. And while I'm at it, I'll just place a water line. For our guys who did the SUE engineering, they would have ended up using NCUtility to place what we at that time called X attributes on that. So we knew the attributes of who owned it. Now we're going to be using something called item types. In order to get that in right now, currently I have to use something called Asset Manager. This is an intermittent step that I'm using right now that hopefully in the very near future we won't have to use. But what I'll do here, so I'm just basically going to add all this information to those items. And before I do that, let me back up and I'll show you what it's doing. If I do an information on this line right here that was drawn, and I probably ought to bring it up this way. You guys are accustomed to this. You've seen this before. You bring up a properties on an element, you see all that information. Well, once I come in here and I add these elements to these assets, you'll see down here it's told you that it added assets to 4 elements. Not exactly certain why it said 4. However, now you'll see that I've got extended information right here for this. So once you put in your utilities, if you was a SUE firm, you'll be able to come right in here and you'll be able to toggle who the owner is, label the size and the materials and information about that, just like NCUtility used to.
So Emory, we have a question from James Jeffries. Are the pipes drawn using the bottom of the pipe? So the 3D location is correct for the pipe, considering that the straight line between points is not the center of the pipe, but the bottom inside of the pipe.
Absolutely, Jeff. It's the bottom of the pipe will be at the invert.
And there's another question from Matt Cornwell. Is there a way to store parcel data, compute property, especially as related to the plan sheet property and PSD condemnation surveys?
Okay. I'm glad you asked that, but I was hesitant to show this. Property is a deep rabbit hole. Sometimes you feel like you're never coming out, and that's because of the way COGO information is stored. You know, we've always relied on a GPK, which basically, when we always think of COGO, we think of points, right? Well, really, this has made me change my line of thinking when it comes to COGO. And I know that I didn't describe that right, but maybe you'll see as I go through this. If we want to build property right now, we got these tools here called Geometry Builder. So I can key, if I want to key a new property, I have the ability, I can call it whatever I want. In this case, we'll call it Gibbs. And I have the ability to key my bearings and distances in. In fact, I'll key something in real quick, and I'll do kind of like when I was showing Tony the other day. So here I basically got a square. Of course, it's kind of like a diamond, but I'll tell it where my begin point is. I'm just going to place it right here. Now you'll see it doesn't look right. That's because I keyed it in correctly. I have the ability right here where I'm keying it in. I can just say, well, I think I can slide this up actually. No, it don't seem to want to work, but I can come in here and I say, well, that should have been 345. And then that should have been so there I see my parcel. So I can place my parcel in as I want. And then I have the ability to rotate and move it around here later. I'll go ahead and place this, and I want you to see that once it's placed, I lost my, okay, there we go. Once it's placed, you'll see it's a microstation element. You see, that's what you would normally expect with microstation. However, I can place rules on this, and I can place it again. And in this case, let me hit undo so I'll get rid of the old one. Now with my rules turned on, I'll go ahead and place that again. I'm sorry. Getting ahead of myself. I should have. And again, this time, instead of placing it without any rules, I'm going to place it as rules. So when I place the item and I press on it again, you'll see that's where a lot of the functionality in ORD comes into play, that I do see the bearings and distances that was used. I can click on any one of these, and for example, if that should have been south 46 degrees east, I can simply key that in. and it'll make the change accordingly. So this is how I see you placing your properties in, and then kind of tracing them over that. What I mean by tracing over that, I do have the ability that when I place these, I come in here and I can say, you know, I want you to be a property. I want you to use the property line symbology. So I can come down here and I'll select property lines under property. So now, and I'll just place this right over top of it, or I might change the beginning point here. So this time when I place it, you see I've got my property symbology that we typically use. The only problem is the next lot that I push over and I place here, it's going to be, it makes it a little bit cumbersome because my line work starts overlapping. It's a little hard to deal with when it comes to the looks of it. Plus, typically we have one side of our property that abuts to the right-of-way, and that's a different symbology. It uses the right-of-way symbology. But this is how I think you'll be building most of your properties. And then, like I said, you have the ability to move those around however you see fit. If I drag and drop that, say I had a particular iron pin that I wanted that to hit, my property lines and bearings change accordingly. Then at the end of the day, when you're finished, you have the ability to come up here to drawing production, I'm sorry. Say element annotation, and all you do is click on it, and there's your bearings and distances labeled. Does that answer the question?
I would think so. And Emory, as far as that shape is concerned, can you do a partial delete? Like if it was next to your alignment, like can you do a partial delete on one of those segments and redraw it in as an existing alignment? Excuse me, existing right of way?
Oh, for example, if let's say this line up here to the northwest, you wanted to that abutted the right of way.
Yeah.
I have tried that, and sometimes I'm successful with it, and other times I'm not. There's just not been any consistency that I have found, and it's perhaps the way I'm using the tool.
Okay, and that's why you were suggesting tracing over it when we're done.
Yes, because you know what you're typically going to do is you're going to compute alignments here for these roads,
Mm-hmm.
and then you're going to offset it. Let's say it's a 60-foot right of way. You're going to offset by 30 feet each way, and you're going to place that right of way line in. So then you can easily trace over that to get your property looking correctly.
Mm-hmm.
That's kind of an extra step, but right now, unless the tools evolve a little bit, I don't see how we can help but do that.
Okay, so, and Emory, that kind of is an excellent segue into another question that was posted, and of course it's gone a little way. Okay, so Philip Shipman had asked, is there a way to build an existing alignment when given plans, or like we do in Geopack? And someone had suggested an answer using the geometry builder to recreate the alignment when you have a set of plans. How do you recreate an alignment from a set of plans?
Okay, that's not my forte, but I'll try my best to do. If you're building geometry, and for instance, we've got these crown lines, and let's just try to work with this crown line here. Typically, there's a couple of different things you could do. Of course, this don't cover everything we want, but let's turn some observations off first off. That gets just a touch cumbersome. Somehow I created multiple field books here. anyhow, you do have the ability over here, as you seen yesterday, you can come in here and you can turn on and off whatever you want to deal with. I can turn everything off, and I can come in here. If I just want to deal with my crown line, I can come here and toggle that on, and I'm going to toggle off my observations. Toggle off all my setups also. So if I was going to build an alignment off of this, there's a couple ways you could do it. You know, typically, if we had done it in the past, we would strike off our tangents and then we build our curve in. So let's look at that. Right now, I'm just going to eyeball it so I can give you a quick idea of what we would do. But I will come in here. And first off, I would probably pick the alignment, because this is going to give you whatever symbology that you want to use. So we'll go to alignment, and we're just going to say it as an existing alignment right here. So I would probably just grab one of these outer points here when I first started, and then I would strike my line roughly as such. How did that not? It didn't take. I'm sorry. So there I'll strike my tangent there. And for instance, I could come in here and I'll roughly strike that in there. So now I've got my two tangents struck and I want to fit in a curve. And again, this is real quick. I'm not going to go through the process of trying to make sure I got this thing really accurate. But I have the ability to set in this arc, and I'm going to come in here and I'm going to pick my two tangents. And then I have the ability to swing this arc in. I'll get it close. And then it's going to ask me, do I want to trim it? And I will trim it. So there's roughly what we're dealing with. To determine, there's a set of reports that you can pull up to see what kind of an offset you got and how well everything fits. And another option you got, which the jury's still out on, you know, I kind of like it, but I don't know exactly how it's going to work for us. Let me hit undo a few times. And that's really this is one of the things that I really like about having everything stored in the design file versus a GPK. That undo button has helped me out quite a few times. But also under complex geometry, you have the find by best fit. Now, I will say that the best fit as of right now does not like OC commands, which I can tell you there's one in here, or there's a couple in here. But anyhow, I can make a best fit, and this is unlike what you're accustomed to seeing in GeoPike. GeoPike, their best fit command was good, but it was complicated. It was hard to understand. This one, you basically have one thing that you're doing. You're defining an envelope around your alignment, and you're saying this is how tight I want you to be. So I'm going to tell it I want to do a best fit. I'm going to go locate this line. It's probably going to get a little freaky because of the OCs. What I could do, and what I will do here in a moment, is I'm going to come in here, I'm going to pick this line, and I'm going to take these arc toggles out. So that should be corded all the way around now. So I can now come in here. I'll just say I want to, well, I got the best fit up. So I'll come in here, I'll pick my object, and you'll see it fits around it. If I just go through it, so it does me a best fit. And you see right here, it has its issues. Sometimes it has a difficult time placing those tangents and the curves together. That's why the jury's still out on it. I think it could be helpful, and in some instances I've seen where these fit very well. I can usually play around with this envelope, because what it's doing is tightening up that envelope that you've seen around there a moment ago. Here, let me. Take this off. When I was doing the best fit there a moment ago and I selected this, you see that envelope there. I could easily come in here and tighten that envelope up, and you'll see that it's a little bit tighter around that. I've had it's a mixed bag right now. Here you see that I went to a 1 foot envelope. Everything matched up. I view the best fit as a starting point. And that's where I'm having a little bit of an issue using this. I can come in here now and I didn't select my. There's my alignment. But anyhow, that's basically how that tool would work.
Okay, thank you, Emory. Have you ever had, have you had the opportunity to work with old plans? You know how you just take the old plans from an original alignment and populate that through the geometry so that you can use that to place as your best fit. Have you done that before?
I haven't. Well, I'll show you how you would do that, or how I believe you would do that. First off, let's just throw out a couple of things, and you can just throw this together any way you want. So we'll just talk like we were dealing with a simple alignment, like we did just a moment ago, Tonya, a couple of tangents and a curve. And I need to set my feature. Now we know right offhand, this is not what we want. We want to type it in correctly, correct?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
So I do have the ability that if I want to come in here, I can tag this curve and I can change the radius. I have the ability to change everything to make it work the way I want. So I think what I would do, for example, this was a, here you can't seem to edit this, but you do have the ability to edit this alignment after you've keyed it in. So you could just key in a fictitious alignment, get it close to looking like what you want, and just do your edits from there. I haven't done that a lot, so that's why I'm probably not the best suited to answer the question, but that's how I would go about doing it.
Okay, there was someone did post an answer. Mark Rhodes said that he would just use the data from old plans. You can, I'm sorry, people keep answering as well. You can duplicate it with the geometry builder.
Well, that's probably a better solution, actually. Mark's been pretty instrumental in helping me out with this stuff. You could actually come in here and you could just key in your bearings and distances. Let's hit a new one. I hadn't even thought about that, Mark. I'm glad you said something. I have the ability to insert arcs here as well as spirals. So yes, that would probably be the best way to go.
Yeah, and Tim Merrill had piped in saying that there's, under complex geometry, there's an alignment builder. I don't see it.
I think he's talking about the same thing, or maybe
Okay.
he's not, but this actually is a multi-purpose tool. It was first built for property by Bentley, and they're wanting to use it for a lot of different things. And I think Mark's probably hitting the nail on the head as far as how you go about it.
Okay, and Tim did say that if you go into complex geometry, complex by element. That first one, maybe?
I'm not sure what he's speaking of there.
Okay.
However, Tim knows very well what's going on, so I
So, Pam, do you have another question?
Yes. I'm trying to think the best one to cover some of the information we have. You talked about the best fit, so there's some changes that are going to happen with that. Of course, I saw how you showed that. Also, you kind of briefed over on Monday on feature codes, and some people might not have been in there, and what's changing about, you had discussed about the star BL, pretty much keeping the same, feature codes, 3001s, but adding it onto the end. I don't know if you want to brief over that. Some people might not have been here on Monday.
Yeah, sure. I'll be happy to. One of the things that we've done is of course, we're setting the feature codes up to basically enhance our operations for ourselves, and we use Trimble data collectors. Of course, we want to make this as flexible as possible for everyone and whatever they use. But when you first come in to your file and you create a field book, the survey settings are copied into the file. And what Pam's talking about here is our linking, not our linking codes, but our linking codes. We use an asterisk BL, an asterisk EL, an asterisk OC. We have changed from what used to be the OC asterisk, the BL asterisk, and we've done that mainly because we can create a feature code library on our data collectors and all our linking codes will pop up at once. We also place that after the feature code. So for example, if you guys are going out there and locating pavement, we key that in as 3001 star BL versus what you're accustomed to, which is probably BL star 3001. And the reason we do that is so we can take advantage of our data collectors in the field. If everything is set up properly, the line work and everything gets drawn out in the field for us, which can prove helpful in case you've located something incorrectly or coded something wrong. So one of the things that you will have the ability to do if you don't wish to change the structure in which you do the linking codes is you can come in here and just toggle this to before, and if you want to use a different linking code than us, you have the ability to change it right here.
So Emory, there's been a couple questions about creating points for stakeout at even stations along an alignment or a station and offset. Can you elaborate a little bit on that?
I wish I could. I can a little bit. If you've got points that you want to get out to your data collector, the easiest thing to do under survey is actually create you a new field book. So if I'm right here, I'd create a new field book. I clicked the wrong option. And then I would bring my points in or compute them. But anyhow, if I computed the points, I would place them in that new field book. Then you have the ability to kick it out to Trimble, like whatever you want, and it will take those points over. Now, I haven't been as fortunate with alignment data. If you want to work off an alignment, say you're staking right away and you want to use station offsets off an alignment, the easiest thing to do is export out the alignment as an XML file, bring that into TBC, and then transfer it over to your data collector. I haven't found a good, easy method for that within ORD.
So we no longer have that from GeoPack, the layout offset chain, where we could.
Okay.
Do we have that as well?
You know, Pam, I can't answer that question. I really am unsure about that right now. Okay. I think you can do it with some of these tools up here. However, I personally haven't done that.
Okay, perfect. All right.
Emory, there is another question. It says, will we be getting and merging photogrammetry? Like, how would that work? And Philip, do you mean with like shell mapping? Is that what you're talking about?
I can show you real quick here.
Yes.
See, I'm going to delete this data here. In fact, I intended to do that earlier, Tonya. That's my fault. Okay, so let's turn this off. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go to Fieldbook 2. If you notice, I accidentally got these things in 2 separate field books. So I've got my DTM data in Fieldbook 3 here. I've got my pavement in Fieldbook 2. So this may not work exactly the way I want, but you know, what's the harm in experimenting? I'm going to come to Fieldbook 2 here, and I want to create a terrain. Now, Don Lee talked yesterday about how it could automatically create the terrain for you as soon as you brought the data in. We have kind of decided that we would just rather you do it or have the option to do that after you were ready to, because a lot of times, sometimes I'm getting older. Sometimes I like to slow things down a little bit, so that's part of it. So I've got a terrain model here called Fieldbook 2. I'm also going to come in here to Fieldbook 3, was it, with the other data?
Yes.
I'm going to come in here and I'm going to create another terrain. So I'll have 2 terrains. I'll have one called 3 and 2, and those 2 are completely separate of each other. So now I can come up here to terrain, and I should be able to merge my terrains up here. I haven't done this much, so bear with me. And in fact, there's probably guys out there right now that know more about this than I do. Anyhow, what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you, I'm unsure where that command is. I'm sorry about that. I'm going to show you how I would bring in the LiDAR data to this model here if I wanted to. So what we've got is we've got a DGN file that we used extracting the tool we typically use, that photogrammetry built for us to get the LiDAR, and I'm going to attach that. This LiDAR, as you see here in this little preview, Richard has already cut out the information from the survey. So when I attach it here, you'll see there's my LiDAR. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to use graphical filter to build this LiDAR data, and this would work the same for photogrammetry data into my survey. So I will come to terrain and say from graphical filter, and I want to say I want to append to a terrain. In this case, I'm going to append to the Fieldbook 3, and then it'll ask me for my graphical filter group. What I'll be able to do is I'll go down here and I can look through this and I'll find my NCDOT location graphical filters. And the one I want to use is this graphical filter called Photo LiDAR Scan. So I'll choose that. I could mess with this. I'm not going to mess with my triangulation options right now. But I can just simply click through it, select my existing terrain. And then it'll process that LiDAR data together with that.
So Emory, when you selected your existing terrain, that was that perimeter outline? I can barely see it on my screen.
Yeah, I apologize. Everything kind of blends in here. Yes, that's what it was.
Okay.
When you build a terrain, you're going to see a small yellow line encompass the terrain that you built, and that's basically the boundary. So now you'll see that this has come out much further. Again, I'll do like I did the other day. I'm going to come over here. First off, I'll turn on my triangles. Change my display to modeling. And let me turn that orange off because that really kills us. I did this the other day. I think I may have put this thing in the death spiral.
But Emory, you don't physically have to bring those points in. You just picked it right out as a reference.
Yes, you can do it that way. I don't know what the best approach is. Some people like to see those points all exist in their file. Myself, I don't know that it adds a whole lot to it other than you can look at it and you can say, okay, these points are all on the basically the LiDAR level, so you know what they are. I'm not sure. Anyhow, my machine's kind of locked up a little bit. Maybe it'll clear up here in a second, but you can start to see the contouring taking place there. Not sure this is going to allow me to do much more.
Well, it's 12 o'clock.
Yeah, and I think we've all been in this situation before. So Emory, there are probably several questions that people have been formulating in their mind as they've been watching you go through this. Is there a way that we can go ahead and have everybody submit their questions and then we can answer them kind of, I don't know, in an email format or some sort of document that we can send to everybody or post it on our website? Can we do something like that?
Sure, we could do that. And 20, if you guys ever want me to do some other things, I'd be happy to, because like I know Mark White showed adjustments. TBC's got similar adjustments. I can't say they're better. They both got pros and cons, but I'll be happy to show anything that you guys might want to in the future. But yes, I'll be happy to go through those questions with you and we can answer those.
That's excellent. So everybody, we still have people putting questions in the chat, and we're going to go ahead and compile all those questions to give to Emory so that we can address them and put them on the NCLUG website. So
I'm sorry, Tonya.
no, go ahead, Pam.
I do have, there is one question that someone brought up. You guys are are you producing a manual for location and service office for the PEFs to utilize?
Well, we still are in discussions, but what we're planning on is our final product. I actually don't know what it will be. It will probably be a combination of both manuals and online videos. What I would like to accomplish with the online videos is actually have the data sets available to the person who's watching the video so they can follow right along and work on their machine at the same time they're watching. Then they got the ability to start and pause that video as they need to be, see if they're getting the same results.
That would be great.
Along with that, we're definitely looking at manuals. Most of the guys out there that have been, and gals, I'm sorry, I don't mean to
No.
sound like I'm discriminating, but we put a filler out to get some of our PEF groups to help in regard to that. And hopefully we'll be making some decisions on how to proceed with that.
Okay, great.
Fairly soon.
Okay, great. Well, thank you, Emory. We hope everyone picked up something they could use. I know I did, of course. So go ahead and keep submitting your questions and we'll go ahead and get a list together for Emory. I want to remind everyone tomorrow is a presentation for drones for surveying coming from all angles with Brian Flaherty from ESP. And if you have any suggestions for future NCLUG topics for both surveying and engineering, go ahead and submit those to events@nclug.com. And thank you again, Emory, for spending your hour with us.
All right, thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Emory. And I did want to say one thing before everybody leaves, that nclug.org, I believe that's the website. I honestly, I get to it typing in nclug.com and then it redirects me. But that has, I put the link in the chat as far as where all the videos will be posted. And some of them are already up there, but they're continuing to be loaded as the day progresses. So thank you, Emory. I appreciate your time.
Sure, no problem, Tonya.
Okay. And thanks, Pam.
Thank you. Thank you.